The bowl season kicks off for season 6, and we're down here in New Orleans, Louisiana. It's the Memphis Tigers and the Tennessee State Tigers taking on each other in the New Orleans Bowl to see who's going to kick off the bowl season with a bang, and not only that, but end their season with a bang. So I'm just going to tell y'all right now, it wasn't a good showing among the HBCUs for season 6 bowl season. So we're going to take this time to talk about what happened in real life among the HBCU schools and what a crazy weekend it was for not only HBCU football, but for college football as a whole. So first, we're going to start off on Thursday night. We saw the Mississippi Valley State Delta Devils go to Tarleton State University to take on the Tarleton State Texans. It wasn't a good performance, but they didn't lose that badly. I forgot Tarleton State is in the WAC. Their starting quarterback is Bo Allen. He's a transfer for Kentucky. I forgot about him. But they won 29-13 over Mississippi Valley State. Allen did look good throwing the ball when he needed to. Got him a couple of touchdown passes. That's that. Now we go to Birmingham, Alabama. Alabama A&M is in Birmingham to take on UAB. And UAB just straight put hands on the Bulldogs of Huntsville. Beat them 59-0. They couldn't get nothing going on offense. They couldn't stop nobody on defense. Just couldn't do anything. Even on special teams, it was an absolute disaster. So now we focus on Saturday's games. And now we're looking at the Labor Day Classic, which was between the Miles College Golden Bears, are in town, the Guptown that is, to take on them Alabama State Hornets. And it was an absolute disaster for Alabama State after the first quarter. So the first quarter, first play of the game, wide receiver pass downfield. They set the tone, eventually they score. Demetrius Davis eventually goes down with looks like a shoulder injury. I'm still waiting on the report on that. Crawley comes into the game. They score 14 more points, and they end the first quarter at 21-0. After that first quarter was a disaster. It looked like Donald Hill-Ely was still at Alabama State for a minute there. As you see that nice touchdown grab by Memphis. So the team just looked an absolute mess in the second quarter. The 2 personal foul calls, let's see, the offense just looked out of sync. They just couldn't get anything going. Miles did absolutely nothing as far as scoring. Like, they would move the ball downfield, but they couldn't get in the end zone. The Alabama State defense did a great job of getting turnovers, and the offense just wouldn't compliment them or accommodate them. Eventually, Miles scored one more time, resulted in a 23-13 victory for Alabama State. But nobody should be proud of that victory. There's a lot that needs to be cleaned up among that football program. Eddie Robinson Jr. has a lot of work to do. So you see Tennessee State lose to New Orleans Bowl to Memphis. Tennessee State in real life, though, went up to Eastern Washington, Cooper Kupp's alma mater, and they lost to the Eastern Washington Eagles. So now we focus on... So now let's get into the Labor Day Classic, and we're back to real life football. Prairie View A&M eventually got away from Texas Southern. That defense was all over Andrew Body and that Texas Southern offense. A lot of people were so fixated on Andrew Body that they don't realize exactly how bad the rest of that offense is for Texas Southern. Wide receivers can't get separation. They're still looking to find that guy who Body can throw to as far as the wide receivers. Defense was a mess. They got out physical. Prairie View A&M just beat them up in the trenches on offense and defense, beating them 40-20. So now we talk about Bethune-Cookman. Of course, it's a paycheck game. They go down to Carl Gables. They're taking on the Miami Hurricanes. Miami looked pretty good. I know it's a FCS school that they played, but Miami did what they were expected to do. So I can't wait for the Miami-Florida State matchup, one of my favorite rivalry games of all time. So as you see, Houston and Southern, they kick it off in the Mobile Bowl, with the GMAC Bowl, and it was just a story of turnovers throughout this entire game. Almost 10 turnovers, not for each team, but combined. So let's go back to real life. So now we're going to talk about the Southern Jaguars. The Southern Jaguars in real life played Florida Memorial. If you don't know about Florida Memorial, it's an HBCU down there in the Miami area. Florida Memorial comes to town. The score at halftime was 56-0. 56-0. The final score of that game turned out to be 86-0 in favor of the Southern Jaguars. That is an absolute embarrassment. Up the Pine Bluff, Arkansas. Arkansas Pine Bluff took on Lane College at HBCU. I believe that is in Jackson, Tennessee. Pine Bluff has no defense once again, but they did win. They beat Lane College 48-42, 1-0 on the season. Next up on the list, we go to Jonesboro, Arkansas. The Arkansas State Red Wolves are taking on the Grambling State Tigers, the G-Men. Grambling State couldn't get anything going. Not a good start to the Hugh Jackson era, but that was expected. I was hoping at least Grambling State would score a touchdown. As you see, Southern get another interception right there. But in the end, they just couldn't get anything going. Arkansas State beat Grambling State 58-3. So then we go down to Longman, Mississippi. And I really thought Alcorn State was going to pull this off. So Alcorn State took on Stephen F. Austin. Now, if you're not familiar with Stephen F. Austin, they played Jacksonville State of Alabama last week in week 0. And Jackson State straight put them in a spliff. Stephen F. Austin was ranked as the number 10 team in the country at the FCS level. Alcorn State, I really thought that they was going to pull this off, but in the end, they ended up choking the game away. So Stephen F. Austin goes to Longman, Mississippi. They beat Alcorn State 31-27, and that wraps up the Saturday games. So now we go to the Sunday game, the game that everybody was anticipating. The Orange Blossom Classic down in Miami is the Jackson State Tigers, the SWAT champions, versus a depleted Florida A&M team. Now, that's no excuse at all. As you see, Akeem Russell take that punt return back for a touchdown right there. That was a nice punt return. But anyway, back to the Orange Blossom Classic. Shedeur Sanders had the game of his life. Shedeur Sanders started off the game 17 for 17. Ended up in the end missing only on what, 3 or 4 targets, over 300 yards passing, and 5 touchdown passes. Travis Hunter, as a true freshman, already has NFL cornerback-like size. The man already had half of that field locked up. So my only thing about Jackson State is they need to get that run game going. Still doesn't look too impressive. I know they got Wilkinson, the transfer from Delaware State, but in the end, they just straight embarrassed Florida A&M. Now, I must say, last time I talked about this in the last video, I thought that Florida A&M was going to make some noise, and good Lord, was I wrong about that. I was dead wrong about that. So, Jackson State destroys Florida A&M 59-3, leaving a lot of questions that need to be answered down there in Tallahassee, Florida. Also, on a side note, we had a CIAA action in the Hall of Fame Classic. So, it was Central State versus Winston-Salem State. And Central State actually ended up taking that W. The game was very sloppy at the beginning. You had back-to-back turnovers. One of those turnovers was a pick 6. Take that back. 2 of those turnovers was a pick 6. It was sloppy in the first half. Second half, Central State eventually got away from them. They turned it up on defense. They got some more turnovers, got some sacks, and in the end, they were just too much for Winston-Salem State. I believe that score ended up being 41-21, if my memory is correct, because I did watch that entire game. So now we go to another game that I watched. The Red Tail Classic. The Tuskegee Tigers and the Fort Valley State Wildcats are in Montgomery for the Red Tail Classic, honoring the Tuskegee Airmen, of course. So Tuskegee still has problems. If you're an Alabama State fan, remember, Ryan Nettles left Alabama State and now he's at Tuskegee. He didn't look too good. The offense as a whole didn't look good at all. The one touchdown they did score, kicker missed the extra point, and Fort Valley State brought the physicality. The running back they had is nice. I like Wilson. Big physical back, hard to tackle. But in the end, the defense did their thing. The running game did their thing. It was on point. Fort Valley State once again beats Tuskegee in the Red Tail Classic for the second consecutive year, 21-6. How could I forget about the MEAC? Let's go back to that Thursday night game between South Carolina State and Central Florida. How can we forget about that crazy punt where Buddy kicked the ball where he was well past the line of scrimmage. They lost that game 56-10. Delaware State beat Lincoln University in Pennsylvania. Norfolk State got put in a split by Marshall. Howard and Hampton in the battle for the rear HU. Hampton actually won that for the second consecutive year. Georgia Southern beat up on Morgan State, and North Carolina Central beat North Carolina A&T. I know there was a lot of mad shit talking during that game between those two teams. Those two schools absolutely hate each other. If you don't know about the history of what is it called, the Aggie Eagle Classic, you need to look that up. Those two schools hate each other. But anyway, you see Arkansas Pine Bluff taking the L in the Motor City Bowl. It wasn't a good showing on the video game for season 6 as far as the ball games. But now I'm considering adjusting the sliders for the CPU to not only make these games more competitive, but make them more efficient. Because as you notice, these quarterbacks throw a lot of interceptions when it's a CPU versus CPU game. But join us next time for the preview of the national championship game in the desert between the Alabama State Hornets and the LSU Tigers. I still can't believe they jumped us at number 1. But anyway, peace.